turns $100 billion, I think that's just a good place to start. $100 billion, there needs to be a lot of spending. And we go through this with a fine-tooth comb, the entire government, the entire budget, look at every item and say whether or not we should continue to fund these programs. I believe in the sunset concept. A sunset concept is this. If a program or department is established, it's not established forever. It's established for 3 years or 5 years, and then the funding stops. Then that department or program has to come back to Congress and get more money to continue the program, or it ceases to exist. That is the way you cut government spending. You start eliminating programs and departments. And we ought to look at everything. And spending out of control. I serve on Foreign Affairs Committee. Not because we border Louisiana, but because, just see if you're around. Some of you, these Louisiana folks, they just get upset when I say that. I wasn't going to say, with all the folks from Louisiana coming over here, we're watching the wrong border. I wasn't going to say that. So, but anyway, foreign aid. You've all heard about foreign aid. Here's how we send money overseas. Your money. We vote on one bill. And in that bill has all 180-something countries that you give money to. And so if we want to give money to Israel, which I believe strongly in doing, helping them, but maybe we don't want to give money to some other country, it's all in one bill. Either you give it to everybody or nobody gets it. Now, we're going to change that. And I think that we ought to have an up or down vote on every country we give money to. There'd be a lot of countries that wouldn't be getting any American money. And I'm telling you, the other side, there are a lot of Democrats who believe just like that. But because of the rules of procedure, you have to vote for all or nothing. And that's one way we can eliminate a lot of your money going overseas. As my friend Louis Gohmert says, 1st District of Texas, we don't need to pay people to hate us. They will do it on their own. But there are a lot of ways to methodically go through and cut the budget. And that's our obligation. Spending, we got to stop. Of course, the tax situation. I was one of those that wasn't really pleased with the deal that was made during Christmas about the tax cuts. Because you got some tax cuts, but you got a lot more spending involved in that legislation. My personal opinion is we should have fought for the tax cuts, and we should not have increased spending anywhere. And that's why 36 conservatives voted against that legislation. We've moved the tax cuts now to a political issue for 2012. And they should be permanent. There should be no death tax. You shouldn't be taxed by the government to die in this country. And we need to have a permanent tax system that is understandable. My own opinion is we need to go to the fair tax or the flat tax. Don't let people on the left give you a guilt trip about paying taxes. August the 16th of last year was the last day in 2010 you paid taxes. In other words, from January 1st all the way to August the 16th, you were giving your money to some government entity. Whether it was a federal government, state government, local government, to municipal utility districts, to school districts. August the 16th, the average American worked and paid taxes. I think that's a little too much. What's that, 60% of your income? Yeah. You know, the good Lord only asked for 10%, and we're giving the government 60%. So, taxation, let's cut the taxes. Economic theorists, and I believe this, you cut taxes, you keep more of your own money, that helps the economy. You small business owners, you hire more people rather than having to pay taxes to the government who does something with your money. Bring down the deficit and quit borrowing money from the Chinese. Just quit doing it. Get your house in order, and now's the time to do it. That is our responsibility. That's where we need to lead. I'll try not to talk so long. I'm already starting to get the look here. I introduced legislation on the first day of Congress, 2 pieces. One is to not allow any federal money, your money, to go to the EPA to implement cap and trade. article in the Wall Street Journal, January 4th, that says EPA at war with Texas. You ought to read it. EPA at war with Texas. January 4th. Read it. That tells you everything you need to know about that issue. They are at war with us. So, and they're trying to kill the energy industry. They don't have the right, the authority to implement this philosophy except by regulation, and we're going to take care of that as well. Other piece of legislation that I introduced, who happens to be one of the supporters of this legislation, Gabby Giffords, is to put 10,000 National Guard troops on the border immediately. Paid for by the federal government, supervised and directed under the governors of the 4 states. The federal government has the obligation to protect our country, and it's not doing a very good job in my opinion. I've had the fortune, or misfortune I guess, to have a great length of long conversations with Tiffany Hartley, whose husband was murdered on Falcon Lake. We got involved in the middle of that. We still are. Just a tragic situation where he was murdered, and of course nothing has been resolved about that. Sheriff Ziggy Gonzalez down in Zapata County is the lead investigator on that. And to show you kind of how Washington isn't listening, I personally think we need more troops, boots on the ground on the border. So Homeland Security last week announced that Homeland Security is sending more Border Patrol agents to protect the Afghanistan border. I don't know if you heard that or not, but their Border Patrol agents have already been sent there. Now more are being sent to protect Afghanistan border against the Taliban coming in from Pakistan. I have voiced my concern with Secretary of Homeland Security Napolitano about that lack of wisdom in making that decision. If anything, we need more people on the border. So border security, more troops on the border is quite important. We start every day the same way in Congress. We have since the Continental Congress existed. Every day we start with a prayer. Every day. Then second thing we do is the pledge. God first, country second. The American flag that's behind the speaker, you've all seen that. But what they don't show on television is what's above the American flag. Does anybody know what's above it?
God we trust.
In God we trust. God first, country second. And that is the heritage of our nation. This year we did something that has not been done in 200 years. 200 years. We read aloud the U.S. Constitution. I thought it was a great idea, especially after it was over. I thought it was a tremendous idea. We need to do that more often. It's very, very important that we do so. The words, still ring true today. And I'm glad we did it. There were some who criticized it, said, "Why do this?" We needed to do it because they asked why we should do it. That's exactly why we did it. Important to read the Constitution. A couple other things I want to talk about that. Procedure, rules are changing. Used to, they would count a budget cut like this. Funny math. If you had something on the floor and you wanted to cut spending to Amtrak, which I try to do every year, and you cut $100 billion out of Amtrak, and that passes the House floor, they count that as a budget cut. Even though they take that $100 billion and they go over here and give it somewhere else. Now that's not a budget cut to me. That you still got $100 billion of taxpayer money. But that's the way they've been counting budget cuts in the past. Those days are over. Now, when you cut $100 billion from Amtrak, it's cut. It doesn't go to some other federal program unless the legislation says it goes to another federal program. That's a good thing. Now, second, any new program, no matter what it is, I introduce legislation for a new program. I have to provide a way to fund that program without raising taxes. That's a good idea. Third thing I want to mention is every piece of legislation filed must cite authority from the U.S. Constitution. Those are some good things, and I hope we follow through with the wishes of the people like you, but I want to thank you for being involved in your government. Our government is only as good as its people, and only as good as the people who are involved in it. And that doesn't mean elected officials only. It means you, because it is your country after all. It doesn't belong to anybody else. It belongs to the people of this country. I'd like now to go into some aspects that have been happening the last couple of days.